In my opinion, horror is easily the most creative genre. There's only so many action and romance movies you can make before they all start to feel kinda samey. But when it comes to horror, it feels like every couple of months we get something new that fundamentally changes the genre. Whether it's a short film, game, or whatever A24 has been cooking up,
Just keep my perspective, okay?
nothing has really stuck with me more than the game Iron Lung. Now, plenty of people have already made videos on it, so much so that I almost didn't make this video. But with new updates and Markipliers movie coming out, I figured now would be the perfect time to do it. Iron Lung was released March 9th, 2022. Made by David Zemensky, an indie game developer with a good chunk of games under his belt, all of which have a PS1 graphic style to them. And it weirdly works. He mostly does first-person shooters, like Dusk and Squirrel Stapler, a game where the protagonist kills and then staples squirrels to his dead wife's corpse.
Oh, yay! Ooh, all right! Oh, yeah!
And somehow that isn't the most out there concept he's come up with. When Iron Lung was released, it was pretty much an instant hit, due to its immersive gameplay, and of course, YouTubers and streamers giving it much deserved attention, with so many funny, quirky reactions.
Don't pee on the floor, use the Commodore.
But the reason people stayed is because of the story. Decades ago, without any prior warning, all radio contact with all known planets were suddenly cut. Upon further investigation, several space stations realized that every planet has disappeared, along with every star, leaving nothing but space stations, uninhabitable moons, and asteroids. This event would later be known as the Quiet Rapture. No one had any visual contact with any planets when the incident occurred, leading many to theorize what could have possibly happened, including an actual religious rapture, some unknown quantum anomaly, or something much more cosmic and sinister. There are no concrete answers as to what and how it happened, but there is hope. 4 moons have been identified to still be intact after the rapture, with one common phenomenon: an ocean of blood. Not much is known about them, how they got there, or how they're even able to keep their liquid form. The only thing we do know is that it's human blood, which just raises more questions than answers. And with supplies dwindling and infrastructures crumbling, survivors have no other choice but to explore. And that is where you come in. You play as a convict, tasked with exploring the Blood Ocean on Moon AT5. You're untrained and unprepared for this venture, but if you're successful, you will earn your freedom. You will be placed inside a makeshift submarine, one of 4 in-service subs made out of whatever spare parts and actual garbage they have left. And for your own safety, you will be welded inside, with no open windows or hatches. Due to these facts, the submarine would be given a nickname: the Iron Lung.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
So already, I'm sold. This idea is so unique, with the idea of the blood oceans and quiet rapture being scary enough concepts on their own. In a way, perfectly mixing thalassophobia and cosmic horror. Plus, when you really think about it, the fear of the ocean and fear of space are very similar. The infinite darkness, how little we've explored, the fact that literally anything could be out there, it's perfect horror. And having no clue as to how the universe came to be like this is even more terrifying. Maybe a ritual gone wrong, or some vengeful godly entity. The only answers we may find are in the trench.
Beginning at descent. Cruising depth in roughly 40 seconds. Stand by. I'm seeing some voltage irregularities in the instruments, so keep an eye out for sparks or flames or anything like that. Approaching maximum depth. The hull's feeling it, but it's still holding strong. Closing porthole shielding. radio signal. You'll be at cruise depth soon, so receive and be careful. You're on your own.
And this is the whole game. No flashbacks to your past or cutscenes when you reach a checkpoint. It's just you in this dark, claustrophobic sub. And even with the PS1 graphics, you can still feel the rust and grime. I recently visited an old, rusty train very similar to the look and design of the Iron Lung, and it's pretty impressive how well it captured that rusty feeling with this graphic style. Now, the gameplay is pretty simple once you get the hang of it. Once you open up your map, you can see that you're on an X and Y axis, so you can move forwards, backwards, and left and right. Now, that would be simple enough, but as shown in the beginning, you can't see out of the front of the sub. So to stop you from just going full speed into a wall, your compass is also equipped with a proximity sensor that goes off if something is too close. There's only one way to see the outside world, and that's by going directly to the back of the sub and taking a picture. This is what makes Iron Lung so special. Having to leave the single ghost light you have to the intentionally more dark and cramped part of the sub adds so much more tension. Unlike most games where you can just freely look around, sometimes even having a vague idea of what the antagonist looks like, in here, you have no idea what's out there until you take a picture. On the map, you can see that 10 locations have been marked. Your main objective is to go to these points of interest and angle your sub in the right way to take a picture. And this might have been the first thing that the creator thought of when making the game. After visiting the Loch Ness Museum in Scotland, which I definitely have to visit, he said, quote, "I have a giant brainstorm list of many more ideas than I'll likely have time to realize. That's where Iron Lung sat following my trip to a Loch Ness Museum in 2019, where a random bit of narration got me thinking about the idea of being underwater taking fuzzy pictures of some unseen creature." It's crazy to think about how one little idea can grow into something this special. The first two locations you visit are somewhat similar. The first being this weird coral-looking thingy. Could be some sort of plant life, like coral, for example. The second location is almost the same, but sharper and edgier. Could be some form of plant life, but maybe more. They're just too jagged and sharp to be a natural occurrence. Perhaps they're the remains of some giant creature. And these points of interest are smack dab next to each other. Pretty much just easy markers to help you understand the controls better. And if you haven't noticed yet, your camera frickin' sucks. I'm guessing whatever team built the ship just duct taped whatever camera they could find onto it. But I bring this up because it greatly helps with the atmosphere and aesthetic. Low quality photos and video just makes something more creepy and mysterious. And I know I'm not the only person that thinks this, with the increasing popularity of analog horror, like Walton Files and Skinamarink. Those perfect imperfections like grain and video glitches that make it feel more real. I'd have many points throughout my playthrough where I'd take pictures and the grain would trick me into thinking that there was something there when there wasn't. But the third location is where things start to get a little more interesting.
Oxygen notification.
This is the first close quarters section of the map, and the closer and closer you get to the object, the more you start to hear something moving. It has a rhythm to it, almost too repetitious to be a natural occurrence. But once you go to the back to take a picture, you can see these. What looks like some sort of tubes or pipes, and judging by the noise, some liquid is going through them. Definitely not natural, but who could have possibly put them here, and for what purpose? You push on to the next two locations, which conveniently aren't just right next to each other, but also in the largest part of the map. You move to the first location, reveling in how easy it is to freely move in such a large environment, only for that to turn into instant fear when you finally arrive and see this. Could it just be grain? My head just messing with me again? You take another picture and it's gone. Oh, come on! This is probably my favorite part of the game, sending a chill down my spine with a single frame. A bit of a reach here, but it kind of reminds me of creepypastas, and how the image associated with them can become more infamous and recognizable than the story that it comes from. The ambiguity and mystery of a photo can sometimes be even more terrifying than any video, because it can leave more to your imagination. And the next location doesn't calm your worries. Taking the picture, you can see a skeleton with a definite skull, which just raises more questions. Could there be more creatures like this out there? Maybe the thing that we saw before is the last of its kind and life is slowly dwindling down here. And that's why I love this game. You never get any concrete answers, leaving just enough to your imagination to build up intrigue. The 6th location is in its own little section of the map, directly on the trench wall. You take the picture and you see this. What appears to be some sort of man-made structure, like a building, with large pillars and noticeable windows. It's doubtful that there's anything living in there, but that's the last thing that we gotta worry about. Because while moving to the next location, the iron lung gets hit. It's actually super helpful, being pushed further into the trench by something. Interestingly, our motion sensor never goes off, so it couldn't have been some giant creature. But it definitely couldn't have been some malfunction in the iron lung because of just how freaking slow it is.
But you see that sucker over there? 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. So
The 7th location is just more bones. No skull this time, but definitely the remains of some large beast. Really bringing into question just how large life forms can get down here. Going back to the map, you can see that the last 3 points of interest are unreachable. There are no clear and obvious paths on the map. But if you look at this section, you can see that it's kind of faded. And with no other options, you take the risk and head in that direction. Or just be a coward and Google it, like I did. The area is pretty slim, taking a heavy toll on the iron lung with some pipes bursting and even fires starting in the back. Out of curiosity, I decided to take pictures of the tunnel to see this. It looks like we're going through some sort of alleyway, suspiciously looking very similar to the 6th point of interest in terms of design. Is there some form of intelligent life down here? Or has some parts of humanity been teleported here somehow? There's no time for questions. Your sub is breaking down, and there's only 3 locations left. The next location is the slimmest part of the map, very difficult to navigate, especially with your motion sensor going off constantly. And the closer we get to whatever this thing is, our vision becomes more distorted and shaky, along with a strange noise, unlike anything we've heard so far. And taking the picture, you get the most mysterious object in the game, almost resembling a star. It could be a black hole, or maybe some sort of radiation. Whatever it is, it's strong enough to bend the matter around it, or at the very least, screw up my perfect 20/20 vision. It's also the only point of interest that constantly moves. As taking multiple pictures, you can see it change position and shape. The weirdest part is that driving into it, nothing happens. But when you leave, you're moved again to the outer part of that area. Again, super convenient, but what happened? It could have been the object we just visited, or maybe something else entirely. The next location is just more bones, very similar to the other 2, almost resembling a ribcage. You move to the 10th and final point of interest, when suddenly your sensor goes off. Moving left or right does nothing, so to see what you're dealing with, you go to take a picture. Whatever that creature was, it greatly damaged the sub. The light now flickering and blood starts pooling in from the outside, with more coming in the closer you get to the last location. But you're almost out of air and the iron lung is running on fumes at this point, so you might as well finish what you started and end this nightmare. You're 1 photo away from earning your freedom. You point at the object to take the photo, but unfortunately, the expedition ultimately raised more questions than answers. Satellite images showed pieces of the SM-13 scattered all over the bottom of the trench, as though it had been torn apart by some huge beast. The wreckage cannot be reached at this time, and no photographs have been recovered. The stars shine pale as bones. The moon is a lifeless corpse, its ocean a gaping wound. The universe, what's left of it, is dying. But somewhere in the void, there must be hope. And that's pretty much the whole game, clocking in at about 45 minutes to an hour. But there is a lot more to talk about. First, let's address the elephant in the room. The ending, it kinda sucks. There was never a moment where I felt 100 or even 10% safe. I was on edge so much that whenever a pipe would burst or my sensor would go off, I would almost feel relief. So to have all of that fantastic build-up and tension lead to a 2-second jump scare, it's kinda disappointing. David ran a poll to see people's reactions, and yeah, those numbers are pretty fair. However, that's really the only complaint that I have with the game. And the biggest complaints that I saw from other people was that and the game being too short. Also people who couldn't understand the controls, bless their hearts.
Am I the only one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece? This isn't stupid! You're stupid!
There are also some comments about another submarine. We're just gonna ignore that. And the criticisms aren't really wrong. I mean, the game definitely could have been longer, and the ending is pretty anticlimactic. But that's kind of the point. It's an immersive experience that entrenches you in this world to build up intrigue. David himself even admitted that it was really more of an experiment with the concept and didn't expect it to sell very well. It was really just luck that the game got as much attention as it did, thanks to word of mouth and, of course, clips of influencers. My favorite of which is when it took Jerma 2 hours to realize he was in a submarine.
Fix the leak? What leak? Am I underwater?
Now let's get back to the game. To start off, you can actually see that final point of interest. The way the game operates is that you can go to any location in any order you want, but whatever location you visit last always results in your death. So if you, for example, just ignore all the other locations and hit the last one first, you get this. It's another structure, almost exactly like the 6th location. Pretty underwhelming, in all honesty, but I noticed something. As I got closer, I started hearing a familiar sound. A little more to the right and you can clearly see that there's more pipes. It's a little detail that's easy to miss, but it has to mean something. But that's not all. In the same area, there are 2 secret points of interest. The first being this tall rock-like thing. Not super interesting visually, but it does emit a strange noise that fades in and out. It could hold some sort of significance, but like everything else in this world, we never get a clear answer. However, the last location is the one exception. It's another submarine, with a title on the side, the SM-8. The same type of submarine that you're piloting right now. Now, I didn't mention it before, as there was no reason to, but in the back of the sub by the camera, there's actually a terminal. It was added in the second update, and if given the proper input, it'll actually give you information. A neat way of getting more info on this world for those who are interested. It also has a language warning, which I think is kind of funny.
Sorry.
Now, I won't go over all of the available info, but I will talk about some for context. There are 2 main superpowers left after the Rapture. Eden, which is the largest man-made structure in current existence, has a population of 468. And then there's the COI, or Consolidation of Iron, with a population of 257. Which means that if my math is mathing, there's only 725 human beings left in the universe. And the funny part is, they both don't like each other. And at some point, the rivalry even resulted in a 9-day battle between the 2. It ended up unresolved, and the COI took some Eden troops as prisoners. And due to the abundance of said prisoners, the COI would enact conviction realization, a quote, humane form of criminal justice used by the COI, where crimes are repaid by doing things like performing surveys, maintenance, other similar beneficial tasks, or redacted. And it's safe to assume that the redacted portion is in regards to the Iron Lung. Because besides prisoners, I doubt there would be anyone willing to go on a suicide mission. And this isn't the only redacted entry, the most concerning of which is typing in fish as an entry, you get redacted. But remember the SM-8 from earlier? Typing that in, instead of a data entry, you get a message to you. Hopefully they don't redact this before updating the database. What most people don't understand is that not all subs are built equal. The SM-8 isn't a burner sub, it really is for exploring and surveying blood oceans. If they send you down in the Iron Lung, they don't give a fuck if you come back, or if the sub comes back, because it's a pile of garbage and you're a piece of shit. You come back with photos? Great. You sit down there and suffocate quietly? Even better. But if they send the SM-8 down, one of the scientists is piloting and they all expect them to return. And now the SM-8 is in the blood ocean in pieces. No, not hit a rock pieces or sprung a leak pieces. It looks like something tore it up, and the weirdest thing is that nobody else seems surprised. We might have found the first planetary life since the Rapture, and they're acting like it's no big deal. I know you're next in line for realization in the Iron Lung, and usually that means you won't be seeing the stars again. But they don't have an SM-8 anymore. They have 3 burner subs and a lot of curiosity about AT-5, and maybe that means you have a chance. And this is where you learn the dark truth. Everything that you've been through, all the pictures you've taken, all the pain and suffering, it's all pointless. You were never intended to return from your mission, and even if you somehow survived the ending, they probably wouldn't have come back for you. It gives the game a whole new light, and the most depressing part is your character already knows it.
Another hidden detail in the back of the sub on the ground, barely visible, is a note written by you. This is not an expedition, it's an execution. When they put you in here, they don't want you to return. And even if you do, and even if they keep their promises, what freedom waits for you? A few dying ships in a sea of dead stars? If there is still hope, it lies beyond the veil. Hope in this void is as illusionary as the starlight. I will choose to breathe my last here, at the bottom of the ocean, unseen, unheard, and uncontrolled. They will get their execution. I will get my freedom. You knew exactly what you signed up for, and have completely accepted the fact that not only are you a pawn, but this will be your metal casket. And even if you succeed, and they do come back for you, would it even be worth it? In most horror games, or any scary scenario, like being kidnapped, badly injured, or even lost at sea, you always have hope. The hope that someone, anyone will help, and that at the very least, humanity as a whole is out there. But in Iron Lung, there's nothing. You're inside a rusty casket, surrounded by blood and other unknown horrors, in an empty universe of infinite darkness. And the handful of humanity that's left not only put you in this situation, but want you to die.
Jeez, Rick, oh my god! That's some pretty hardcore stuff. What in the hell?
And I think that's why this game has stuck with me as much as it has. No other movie or game has filled me with such a unique sense of dread. And this is all thanks to David Zemensky. I really don't think he realizes just how well crafted this game is.
Hey, just working hard so I can please you.
He also made the soundtrack too, which was achieved by actually sampling sounds of groaning metal and industrial tools, which is just absolutely genius. The only thing really bringing the game down is that it really doesn't have a lot of replay value. But much like Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm mostly here for the story. Both games actually have a surprising amount of similarities, on top of having a movie coming out this year. Oh yeah, speaking of. Not a whole lot of information has been released as of making this video, so I'm going to go over what I do know and what I would personally like to see from the film. The film will be written, produced, and directed by Markiplier, and though no exact date has been given, it is set to release sometime later this year. Filming ended a couple months ago, so it is currently in post-production. It isn't going to be a short film either, as it's actually set for a theatrical release, which is awesome. And I gotta say, this film is definitely in great hands. Mark and his production team have definitely proven themselves over the years, with projects like In Space and many, many more. There's only 3 people confirmed in the cast as of now, with Markiplier leading the film. That, and I'm happy to hear that David Zemensky is heavily involved in production, having collaborated with the script and even has a small cameo role in the film. Along with Andrew Husholt making the soundtrack, he's worked with David before and does a lot of heavy metal action music. I was a little worried at first because of that. The music in Iron Lung is very important to the atmosphere and tone, but I listened to some of his other tracks while editing this video and I think he's gonna do great. I guess my biggest fear is that they'll do that thing that movies in the 2000s would do and end on a song that doesn't fit the rest of the movie. However, he did make the track used in the teaser of the movie, and if the rest of the soundtrack is like that, I couldn't be happier. The only thing I can't figure out is how well the camera mechanic is going to work in the film. They could go the easy route and just have Mark be able to see out of the sub, but I think the camera could still work. I recently watched A Kid and the Camera, a 7-minute long short horror film on YouTube, where a kid starts taking pictures while leaving his house in case he gets lost. And I don't want to spoil it, as you should definitely go watch it yourself, but the tension that builds with every photo and how it's presented is further proof that this could work on film. And visually speaking, this film is just gonna knock it out of the park. Deadly Melodic is doing the concept art for the film, and looking at his previous works, we're definitely in for a real treat. Unfortunately, that's where the info ends, but even with how little we know, I couldn't be more excited for this project. David Zemensky created one of the most terrifying worlds in any game, and Mark and his team have the capability of not only bringing that world to life, but creating something truly special. And I personally can't wait to crawl out of my basement and watch it in theaters. In conclusion, I'm going to give Markiplier's Iron Lung, the movie, the game, a solid but totally unbiased 3 out of 10. There just wasn't enough funny microtransactions and character skins in the game. However, I will change my rating if they add a Markiplier DLC by the time I finish this video. If you want to learn more about the game and how it works, I will put video links in the description. It's actually very interesting. I hope you enjoyed the video, and more importantly, I hope you have a fantastic day. Laters!